The vault on Nexus Prime Station held the most dangerous things in the galaxy. Behind thick walls and energy shields, artifacts from dead civilizations waited in silence. Some could destroy planets. Others could tear holes in space itself. But none were as feared as the thing in Chamber 7. The Voidborn armor stood alone in the center of the room. It was made of black metal that seemed to drink in the light around it. Strange symbols flickered across its surface, appearing and disappearing like dreams. The armor had no owner. It had been waiting for 3,000 years. Taman pressed his hand against the observation window and stared at the ancient suit. He was a human scientist who studied old alien cultures. His government had sent him to Nexus Prime to examine the armor and learn its secrets. He had read the reports during his journey here. Every word made the mystery deeper. Standing beside him was Hana, a young engineer with quick hands and a sharp mind. She kept adjusting her scanner, trying to get a clear reading through the reinforced glass. The numbers on her screen made no sense. The armor registered as solid metal and empty space at the same time. "This is impossible," Hana muttered. "My equipment says it's there and not there. How can something exist like this?" Jiwoo, their security officer, stood near the door with his arms crossed. He was a practical man who trusted his instincts more than machines. Everything about this place made those instincts scream danger. "Maybe we should ask why we're looking at it instead of how it works." The door opened and Threshcore entered the chamber. He was the station commander, a tall reptilian alien with dark green scales and yellow eyes that showed his contempt clearly. He looked at the three humans like they were children playing with adult tools. "You have read the files," Threshcore said. His voice was cold and formal. 67 species have tried to wear the armor. All failed. Most died. The lucky ones only went insane. Taman turned from the window. "The reports say it was found on a dead world. No other technology. No buildings. Just the armor standing in a field of bones. Crystallized bones," Threshcore corrected. "Whatever killed that world turned living tissue into glass. Only the armor survived." He moved closer to the window, and for a moment something like fear crossed his face. The armor emits a psychic pressure. When someone tries to wear it, the pressure increases. It forces the wearer to experience every fear, every trauma, every moment of weakness all at once. Hana looked up from her scanner. "Simultaneous total psychological exposure. The mind can't handle that much at once." "Correct." Threshcore pointed at the armor. 2 years ago, a crystallid scholar touched it. Her species has diamond-hard skin and minds like mathematical equations. She shattered in 3 seconds. Her consciousness couldn't bear what the armor showed her. Jiwoo shifted his weight. "Then why keep it? Why not destroy it?" The station commander's laugh was bitter. "We tried. Plasma cutters, molecular disintegrators, antimatter bombs. The armor absorbed everything. We tried to move it by force. It wouldn't move. We tried to scan its internal structure. Our instruments showed only static." He looked at each human in turn. "It simply exists, waiting." Taman studied the symbols flowing across the armor's surface. They reminded him of something he had seen before in ruins on the edge of human space. "The Council brought us here for a reason." "What changed?" Threshercore's face grew darker. "The Devourers have awakened. They're consuming entire star systems. Our fleets cannot stop them. Old records suggest the armor was made to fight beings like them." He paused. "But those records also say the armor requires a bearer. Someone to wear it and control its power. And no one can wear it without dying," Hana said softly. "Until now, no one has tried from your species." Threshcore's tone made it clear what he thought of that idea. "The Council debates whether humans might succeed where others failed. I think it is foolish hope. Your species is young. You know nothing of psychic discipline. You will fail just like all the others." Taman looked back at the armor. Through the glass, he could almost feel it watching him. There was an intelligence behind that black metal, something old and patient. Maybe that's exactly why we might succeed. "Explain," Threshcore demanded. "Every species that failed was trying to maintain perfect mental control," Taman said. "They tried to keep their consciousness separate from the armor's influence. But humans don't work that way. We carry our traumas with us every day. We function while broken. We don't try to be perfect. We just try to survive." Threshcore stared at him for a long moment. "You think your weakness is a strength?" "I think the armor isn't looking for strength," Taimin replied quietly. "I think it's looking for someone who already knows how to carry impossible weight." The station commander turned away. The council will decide tomorrow whether to allow a human trial. Prepare yourselves. If they say yes, one of you will touch that armor, and likely one of you will die. After Threshcore left, the three humans stood in silence. The armor waited in its chamber, symbols dancing across its surface like whispered promises. Somewhere in the distance, warning alarms echoed through the station. The Devourers were getting closer. Jiwoo put his hand on Taemin's shoulder. You're thinking of volunteering. It wasn't a question. Taemin nodded slowly. Someone has to try. Hana's voice was small. And if it kills you? Taemin smiled, but there was no humor in it. Then at least we'll know, and someone else can learn from my failure. They stood together, three humans far from home, staring at an ancient weapon that had destroyed everyone who tried to claim it. Outside the station, stars burned in the darkness, and somewhere in that darkness, the Devourers were coming closer with every passing moment. The emergency session of the Galactic Council was chaos. Representatives from 200 species filled the chamber, their voices creating a wall of sound that the translation system struggled to process. On the main display, red dots marked another 3-star systems that had gone silent in the past week. Taemin sat in the observation gallery with Hana and Jiwoo, watching the council tear itself apart with arguments. Below them, holographic projections showed the Devourers in action. The images were difficult to look at. Massive ships made of dark matter swept through populated systems, consuming everything they touched. Planets, stations, fleets all converted into pure energy to fuel the Devourers' endless hunger. How do you fight something like that? Hana whispered. Her hands gripped the railing so tight her knuckles turned white. A military strategist was speaking now, a crystalline being whose body refracted light into painful patterns. Our weapons are useless. The Devourers adapt to every attack. Plasma weapons, kinetic bombardment, quantum torpedoes, they absorb it all and grow stronger. Another representative stood, this one a floating mass of tentacles and eyes. We must evacuate the outer sectors, save who we can and abandon the rest. The chamber erupted in protest. Abandon entire civilizations? Impossible, unthinkable. But what choice did they have? Threshcore rose from his seat among the military commanders. There is one option we have not tried. He activated a control and the Voidborn armor appeared on the display. Ancient texts say this was created to fight beings that exist between dimensions. The Devourers match that description. An old council member, her species so ancient that humans had no name for them, shook her head. We know the armor's power. We also know its price. No one can wear it. No alien species can wear it, Threshcore corrected. He looked up at the observation gallery, directly at the three humans. But we have not tried humanity yet. The chamber fell silent. 200 species turned to stare at Taemin, Hana, and Jiwoo. The weight of those eyes was crushing. A council elder spoke, his voice like grinding stones. Humans are primitives. They joined the council only 5 years ago. Their lifespans are short, their technology borrowed, their mental disciplines non-existent. Why would they succeed where we failed? Hana surprised everyone by standing up. Her voice was small but clear. Because we're used to failing. We fail all the time. And then we get up and try again. Taemin stood beside her. Every species here is older than humanity, wiser, stronger, but maybe that's the problem. You've forgotten what it's like to be desperate, to have no good choices, to do impossible things because the alternative is worse. Jiwoo joined them. Humans evolved on a death world. Our planet tried to kill us every day. Diseases, predators, weather, other humans. We survived by learning to carry wounds and keep walking. Maybe the armor needs someone who already knows how to do that. The ancient council members studied them with eyes that had seen civilizations rise and fall. You truly believe you can bear what destroyed 67 attempts before you? No, Taemin said honestly. But I'm willing to try. Because what's the alternative? Let the Devourers consume the galaxy? Let billions die because we were too afraid to attempt the impossible? The council debated for hours. Some argued for immediate testing. Others wanted more research, more preparation, more safeguards. A few suggested using artificial intelligence or cybernetics to bypass the psychic pressure. But simulations showed those approaches would fail. The armor required a biological consciousness, a living mind capable of experiencing trauma. Threshcore spoke again, and this time his voice carried a strange respect. I opposed the humans joining this council. I thought they were too young, too reckless, too simple. But I see now that simplicity has value. They do not overthink. They see what needs doing and they do it. Another commander, this one covered in metallic armor that was part of his biology, leaned forward. If a human touches the armor and survives even for a moment, it proves the concept. We can study what makes them different, perhaps develop training protocols. And if the human dies? Someone asked. The chamber fell quiet again. Everyone looked at Taemin. He thought about his sister who died when he was young. He thought about the years he spent on the streets, hungry and cold. He thought about the war he survived when most of his friends did not. All those memories had shaped him, made him who he was. They hurt, yes. They always hurt. But he had learned to live with that hurt. If I die, Taemin said slowly, then you'll know for certain that humans can't do it either, and you can stop wasting time on this approach. He looked at Hana and Jiwoo. But I don't think I'll die. I think the armor is waiting for someone who understands it. The vote was called. It wasn't unanimous. Many council members abstained, making their disapproval clear without voting against it. But enough voted yes. The humans would be allowed to attempt what no other species could do. After the session ended, Taemin stood at the gallery window, looking out at the stars. Hana joined him, her reflection visible in the glass beside his. You don't have to do this, she said. Let me try first. I'm younger. Less valuable to the research team. Taemin shook his head. That's exactly why it should be me. I've lived more, experienced more trauma. If the armor responds to psychological scars, mine are deeper. That's not something to be proud of, Hana said quietly. No, Taemin agreed. But it might be something useful. For the first time, all the bad things that happened to me might actually matter, might save lives. Jiwoo approached from behind. Medical teams are preparing the testing chamber. They want to start tomorrow. They're installing every safety measure they can think of. Neural dampeners, psionic barriers, emergency extraction protocols. Will any of that help? Hana asked. Probably not, Jiwoo admitted, but it makes them feel better. Gives them the illusion of control. Taemin turned from the window. Then let's get some rest. Tomorrow we find out if humans are special or just another species that couldn't bear the weight. They walked together through the station's corridors. Around them, aliens from hundreds of worlds moved about their business. Some stared at the humans with hope. Others with pity. All of them knew what was coming. In his quarters, Taemin lay awake for hours. He could feel the armor waiting even from across the station. It was aware of him now. Its attention focused like a spotlight. The sensation should have been terrifying. Instead, it felt almost familiar, like recognizing something he had known all along but never had a name for. Tomorrow, he would touch the armor. Tomorrow, he would learn if human resilience was enough. Tomorrow, everything would change. Outside his window, stars burned in the endless dark, and between them, hidden in that darkness, the devourers continued their feast. The testing chamber looked more like a medical facility than a laboratory. Banks of monitors lined the walls, each one tracking different aspects of biological and psychic activity. Medical teams stood ready with equipment that could restart hearts, stabilize neural activity, and extract Taemin within seconds if things went wrong. Taemin sat in the preparation area while technicians attached sensors to his head, chest, and arms. Small patches monitored his heart rate, brain waves, and stress hormones. Every system in his body would be watched during the test. If the armor started to destroy his mind, they would see it happening and pull him out. At least that was the theory. Hana checked the monitor readings for the third time. Everything showed normal. Taemin's heart beat steady and strong. His brain activity was calm. If he was afraid, the sensors couldn't detect it. You should be terrified, she said quietly. Every person who touched that armor before you either died or went insane. Why aren't you afraid? Taemin thought about it. I am afraid. But I've been afraid before. Fear is just another thing to carry. He looked at her and smiled. Besides, someone has to go first. Might as well be me. Jiwoo stood by the chamber entrance, his hand resting on the emergency shutdown controls. The moment something looks wrong, I'm pulling you out. I don't care what the council says. I know, Taemin said. That's why I wanted you here. In the observation galleries above, hundreds of council representatives gathered to watch. Some brought recording equipment, wanting to document what they expected to be another failure. Others came out of genuine hope, praying that somehow humanity would succeed where everyone else had failed. Threshcore stood in the front row, his expression unreadable. Next to him, the ancient council elder who had questioned the humans yesterday now watched with intense interest. A medical officer approached Taimin. "We're ready when you are. The procedure is simple. Enter the chamber, approach the armor, and make physical contact with any part of it. The moment you feel overwhelming pressure, step back. Don't try to be brave. Don't try to push through. Just touch it and retreat. Understood?" Taimin nodded. He stood up, the sensors trailing from his body to nearby machines. The chamber door opened with a hiss of pressurized air. Beyond it, the void-born armor stood on its platform, waiting. As Taimin walked toward the chamber, Hana grabbed his arm. "Come back," she said. "Whatever happens in there, come back to us." "I will," he promised. He didn't know if he was lying. The chamber door closed behind him with a sound like a tomb ceiling. Suddenly, Taimin was alone with the armor. The room was large but felt small. The armor drew the eye, pulled at the attention. It was impossible to look away from it. Taimin walked slowly across the chamber floor. Each step felt heavier than the last. The air grew thick, pressing against his skin. His ears popped as if he was descending deep underwater. The sensors on his body registered the changes. In the observation room, medical teams watched his brain activity spike. "Neural patterns are elevating," someone said. "He's not even close yet." "Heart rate increasing," another voice reported. "Blood pressure rising." Hana stared at the monitors, her hands clenched into fists. "He's still conscious, he's still walking. That's further than most species got." Taimin stopped 3 feet from the armor. This close, he could see details invisible from the observation window. The black metal wasn't solid. It moved like liquid frozen in time. Symbols crawled across its surface, and now he could almost read them. They were warnings, instructions, promises and threats written in a language older than starlight. He reached out his hand. The pressure increased. It felt like standing at the bottom of an ocean, weight crushing down from all sides. His vision blurred. His ears rang. Every instinct screamed at him to run. But Taimin had spent his life ignoring instincts that told him to give up. He pushed his hand forward. The moment his fingers touched the armor's gauntlet, everything changed. Alarms exploded across every monitor in the observation room. Taimin's neural activity spiked so high the sensors couldn't track it properly. His body went rigid, muscles locked. The armor's surface rippled like water disturbed by wind. Black tendrils, thin as hair, began crawling up Taimin's arm. "Extract him," someone shouted. "He's seizing." Jiwoo reached for the emergency controls, but Hana grabbed his hand. "Wait, look at his eyes." In the chamber, Taimin stood frozen, but his eyes were open, clear, focused. He wasn't seizing. He was experiencing something beyond what the monitors could measure. Inside Taimin's mind, the armor showed him everything. It forced him to relive his worst memories all at once. He saw his sister's shuttle exploding, heard her final transmission. He felt the cold of the streets when he was homeless, the hunger that never stopped. He experienced the war again, watched his friends die again, felt the guilt of surviving when they did not. The pain was immense, total, absolute. It should have broken him. But Taimin had lived through these moments before. He had survived them once. He could survive them again. The armor wasn't showing him anything new. It was just forcing him to acknowledge what he already carried every day. "I know," Taimin whispered to the armor. "I know what I am. I know what I've lost. I know the weight I carry, but I'm still here. I'm still standing." The armor listened. For 3,000 years it had tested beings from across the galaxy. All of them tried to fight the memories, to push them away, to maintain their sense of self as separate from their trauma. All of them failed. This human wasn't fighting. He was accepting. He looked at his pain and acknowledged it without breaking. The armor recognized something it had been waiting for. Not perfection, but the ability to function despite imperfection. The black tendrils stopped spreading. They hung in the air for a moment, then slowly retracted. Taemin's body relaxed. His brain activity stabilized. He stood before the armor, still touching it, still conscious. The observation room fell silent. On every monitor, impossible readings displayed themselves. Taemin shouldn't be standing. He shouldn't be sane. But he was both. Threshcore leaned forward, his eyes wide. He's doing it. The human is actually doing it. The ancient council elder nodded slowly. Not just doing it, understanding it. The armor has been waiting for someone who already knew how to carry unbearable things. After what felt like hours but was only 30 seconds, Taemin pulled his hand back from the armor. The connection broke. He stumbled, and Jiwoo burst into the chamber to catch him before he fell. "I'm okay," Taemin said, though his voice shook. "I'm okay." Medical teams surrounded him, checking vitals, scanning for damage. Physically, he was fine. His brain showed no signs of trauma. His heart was strong. By every measure they could use, Taemin had survived what killed or destroyed everyone else. Hana pushed through the crowd and hugged him so tight he could barely breathe. "You idiot. You beautiful, stupid idiot." Taemin laughed, though it came out more like a sob. "I touched it. I actually touched it." "You did more than touch it," Jiwoo said quietly. "You communicated with it. We could see it on the monitors. The armor responded to you." In his mind, Taemin could still feel the armor's presence. It was no longer just an object in a chamber. It was aware of him now, interested in him. The connection wasn't broken. It was just waiting. The council representatives in the observation gallery erupted into discussion. Some celebrated. Others expressed fear. All of them realized they had just witnessed something that changed everything. For the first time in 3,000 years, the Voidborn armor had accepted a touch without destroying the one who touched it. And the one it accepted was human. News of Taemin's successful contact spread through Nexus Prime like fire through dry grass. Within hours, every species in the council knew that a human had touched the Voidborn armor and survived. The impossible had become possible, but touching the armor and wearing it were completely different challenges. Taemin sat in the medical bay while doctors ran tests. Everything came back normal, yet he felt different, changed. He could sense the armor even from across the station, a quiet presence in the back of his mind. It was patient. It was waiting for him to return. Hana noticed the changes first. Taemin slept less each night. He ate smaller meals. His eyes had a distant quality, as if he was seeing things beyond normal vision. When she asked him about it, he struggled to explain. "It's like having a second set of thoughts," he said. "Not controlling me. Just there, waiting. The armor wants to bond completely. It's ready. The question is whether I'm ready." "Are you?" she asked. Taemin looked at his hands. They were ordinary human hands, small and weak compared to most species. "I don't know. But the Devourers consumed another system yesterday. 6 billion lives gone. How much longer can I wait?" The council reconvened in emergency session. Military commanders demanded immediate action. The Devourers were accelerating their attacks, growing bolder. If the armor could be used as a weapon, they needed it deployed now. Threshcore stood before the assembly. His position on humans clearly changed. Touching the armor was the first test. Wearing it is different. Every previous attempt at full bonding resulted in immediate death or permanent insanity. But the human proved he can withstand the armor's psychic pressure. I believe he can go further. Not everyone agreed. A faction led by a cautious diplomat argued for more testing, more preparation, more time. But time was the one resource the galaxy didn't have. The ancient council elder who had watched Taemin's first test spoke with quiet authority. "The armor has chosen. It recognized something in this human. We can study and debate, but ultimately, the decision belongs to him. Will he attempt the bonding or not?" All eyes turned to Taemin, who stood in the chamber with Hana and Jiwoo beside him. The weight of the galaxy's fate pressed down on his shoulders. It should have been crushing. Instead, it felt familiar. "Just another burden to carry, I'll do it," Taemin said simply. "Prepare the chamber." The second test was scheduled for the following day. More precautions were added. Additional psionic barriers were erected. A neural disruptor system was installed that could flood the chamber with energy designed to break psychic connections. If Timon started to lose control, they would use it, even if the process might damage his mind permanently. That night, Timon couldn't sleep. He stood at his quarters window watching ships come and go from the station. Each one carried refugees from worlds threatened by the Devourers. Families with everything they owned in small containers. Children who didn't understand why they could never go home again. Jiwoo found him there at 3 a.m. "Can't sleep either?" "Every time I close my eyes, I see the armor," Taemin admitted. "It's calling to me, showing me what I could become, what it would cost, and what would it cost?" Jiwoo asked. Taemin was quiet for a long moment. "Everything. The armor doesn't just sit on your body. It merges with your consciousness. You don't wear it. You become it. The person I am now wouldn't exist anymore. Not completely. Then don't do it," Jiwoo said firmly. "The galaxy can find another way. You don't have to sacrifice yourself." "But I do," Taemin replied. "Because I can. Because no one else can. That's what it means to be human, isn't it? We do impossible things because someone has to." The testing chamber the next day was even more crowded than before. Council military leaders attended in person, evaluating whether the armor could truly be the weapon they needed. Scientists prepared instruments to measure every aspect of the bonding process. Medical teams stood ready for the worst. Taemin entered the chamber alone this time. No sensors attached to his body. No safety measures except the neural disruptor system. The armor stood on its platform and he could feel its anticipation. It had been waiting for 3,000 years. A few more seconds meant nothing. He approached slowly, each step deliberate. The pressure built again, but this time he understood it. The armor wasn't attacking his mind. It was testing his resolve, making sure he knew what he was choosing. Taemin reached out and lifted the helmet. The moment his hands touched it, the armor came alive. It flowed up his arms like liquid metal, spreading across his body faster than the eye could follow. He wanted to scream as it covered him completely, but no sound came out. Inside the armor, Taemin experienced something beyond pain. The armor flooded his consciousness with images, memories, knowledge. He saw civilizations that rose and fell millions of years before humanity existed. He witnessed wars fought across dimensions that normal beings couldn't perceive. He felt the deaths of the armor's previous wearers, their minds shattering under the weight of what they tried to contain. The armor showed him what he would become if he bonded with it. He would gain power beyond imagination. He could fight the Devourers. He could save the galaxy. But he would also lose himself. Every moment wearing the armor would age his consciousness. He would experience time differently, perceiving seconds as hours. The armor would show him all possible futures, all potential disasters, every way everyone around him could die. To function, he would have to acknowledge all of this while choosing to act anyway. Most beings would refuse. The price was too high. But Taemin had spent his entire life carrying weights that should have broken him. What was one more burden? "I accept," he whispered inside the armor. "Show me what I need to be," the armor responded. Instead of fighting his consciousness, it wove around it. Instead of replacing who he was, it integrated with him. Taemin remained Taemin, but he was also more. He could feel the armor's vast age, its patient waiting, its purpose. In the observation room, every monitor went wild. Taemin's vital signs became impossible to read. Energy readings spiked beyond measurement. Reality itself seemed to ripple around the chamber. "Shut it down," someone shouted. "He's losing integrity." But Hana saw what others missed. On the monitors beneath the chaos, a pattern was forming. Taemin's brainwaves and the armor's energy signature were synchronizing, not merging. "Not fighting, harmonizing, don't," she yelled. "He's doing it. He's actually bonding with it." The process took 90 seconds. 90 seconds that felt like 90 years to Taemin. When it ended, he stood in the center of the chamber, encased completely in the void-born armor. The black metal had settled onto his body like a second skin. Symbols flowed across its surface in patterns that hurt to look at directly. He opened his eyes and they glowed with light from somewhere beyond normal space. When he moved, reality seemed to bend slightly around him. He was no longer just a human wearing armor. He was something new, something the galaxy had never seen before. Taemin raised his hand and watched the armor respond to his thoughts. Power flowed through him, vast and terrible. He could feel dimensions beyond the normal 3. He could perceive time in ways that didn't have words. He could see through walls, through ships, through the very fabric of space itself. And he could feel the devourers out there in the dark, eating their way through the galaxy. For the first time, he understood what needed to be done. The chamber door opened. Jiwoo and Hana rushed in, stopping a few feet away. The person in the armor looked like Taimin. Sounded like him, but his eyes held something ancient and far away. "It's still me," Taimin said, his voice echoing strangely. "I'm still here. But I'm also more now. The armor and I are one. Can you control it?" Jiwoo asked carefully. Taimin lifted his hand and a small sphere of dark energy formed above his palm. It rotated slowly, containing enough power to destroy the entire chamber. Then it vanished. "Yes, I can control it. But it takes concentration. Every moment is a battle to maintain balance." Hana stepped closer. "How do you feel?" Taimin looked at her, and for a moment his eyes were just his own again. "Tired, so tired, but we have work to do." The training facility was built deep inside an asteroid, far from any inhabited systems. If something went wrong, if Taimin lost control, the destruction would be contained. At least that was the theory. Taimin stood in the center of a massive chamber carved from solid rock. The armor flowed over his body like living darkness, responding to his thoughts faster than conscious intention. Around him, testing equipment measured energy outputs that made no sense according to standard physics. "Try phasing through the barrier," a technician's voice said through the speakers. A wall of energy appeared across the chamber, glowing blue and supposedly impenetrable. Taimin didn't run at it. He simply thought about being on the other side, and reality adjusted itself. One moment he stood before the barrier. The next moment he was beyond it. He had passed through solid energy as if it didn't exist. The technicians checked their readings 3 times. Impossible. That barrier operates across 6 dimensions. Nothing should be able to phase through it. The armor exists in more than 6 dimensions, Hana explained from her monitoring station. She had spent the past week studying Taimin's new abilities, and each discovery was more impossible than the last. When he phases, he's not moving through the barrier. He's stepping around it through a dimension it doesn't protect. Jiwoo watched from the observation window, his expression troubled. What else can he do? They found out over the following days. Taimin could perceive time non-linearly, seeing a few seconds into the future and past overlaid on the present. He could strike with energy that bypassed shields entirely, passing through matter selectively to destroy only what he targeted. He could survive in hard vacuum, his armor creating a pocket of stable reality around him. But every ability came with a cost that grew more apparent each day. Taimin slept less than an hour per night. He ate only when Hana forced him to remember. His humor, once quick and warm, faded away. He spoke less, and when he did, his words carried strange weight, as if each one was chosen from infinite possibilities. During a training session, Taimin lost control for just 3 seconds. The void energy he was practicing with escaped his mental grasp and tore a hole in the facility's outer wall. Not a physical hole. Something worse. A rift opened into whatever dimension the armor drew its power from. Through the rift, they saw things, vast shapes moving in darkness. Intelligence without form, hunger that had no end. The rift pulled at reality, trying to widen, and for a terrible moment everyone thought the facility would be consumed. Taimin forced it closed through sheer will, but the damage was done. The wall where the rift had been looked normal, but instruments showed it was fundamentally changed. Matter there existed in a state that shouldn't be possible. It would take months to repair if it could be repaired at all. Threshcore reviewed the incident reports with growing concern. The armor is more dangerous than the Devourers. If he loses control during combat, he could destroy entire systems. He didn't lose control, Hana argued. He opened the rift by accident and then closed it. That shows he has mastery. For now, Threshcore countered. But how long can he maintain that mastery? Look at him. The human is fading. The armor is consuming him slowly, it was true. Taimin moved differently now, like he was only partially present. His eyes held that distant quality all the time. When people spoke to him, there was a lag before he responded, as if he had to remember how to interact normally. Late one night, Hana found him in the observation deck, staring at stars. She sat beside him without speaking. They stayed like that for several minutes before Taimin acknowledged her presence. "I see too much now," he said quietly. "Every time I look at you, I see 1,000 ways you could die. Accidents, equipment failures, violence. The armor shows me all of it. Every possibility, every potential future. That sounds horrible, Hana said. It is. Taemin closed his eyes, but even that didn't help. The visions continued inside his own head. To function, I have to acknowledge every horrible possibility while choosing to act anyway. It's like standing at the edge of an infinite cliff and stepping forward anyway. Is it worth it? Hana asked. This sacrifice you're making? Taemin opened his eyes and looked at her directly. For just a moment he was himself again. Just Taemin, her friend, the man she had worked beside for years. I've seen what happens if I don't wear the armor. The Devourers consume everything. Every world. Every species. Every star. I've seen that future. This is better. Even if it destroys you? Even then. The council grew increasingly divided over what to do with Taemin. Some saw him as their salvation, the weapon that could finally stop the Devourers. Others viewed him as a threat potentially worse than what they were fighting. The armor was too powerful, too unpredictable, too alien. A faction led by a cautious politician demanded safeguards. They wanted neural inhibitors, kill switches, ways to shut Taemin down if he became a danger. Threshcore refused, pointing out that any system designed to control Taemin would also weaken him against the Devourers. You want a weapon you can control, Threshcore said to the council, but such weapons are too weak to save us. We must accept the risk or accept defeat. There is no middle ground. While the council debated, the Devourers attacked Sanctuary Station, a massive habitat holding 3 billion lives. It was the largest populated structure in the outer sectors, home to refugees from 100 different worlds. If it fell, the psychological impact would be devastating. The council fleet responded immediately, but everyone knew they were outmatched. Conventional weapons couldn't stop the Devourers. They had learned that painful lesson repeatedly. Threshcore came to the training facility personally. He found Taemin in the meditation chamber, sitting cross-legged in the armor, surrounded by floating symbols that hurt to look at directly. Sanctuary Station is under attack, Threshcore said. 3 billion lives hang in the balance. The council votes on whether to deploy you. I need to know, are you ready? Taemin opened his eyes. The glow had intensified. When he spoke, his voice carried harmonics that shouldn't exist in normal space. I'm as ready as I'll ever be. The armor and I have reached an understanding. It will give me the power I need. In return, I accept the cost. And what is the cost? Threshcore asked. Everything, Taemin replied simply. Every moment in the armor ages me in ways that can't be measured. I experience more time than actually passes, but that's acceptable. 3 billion lives are worth it. Threshcore studied the human for a long moment. I was wrong about your species. I thought humans were weak, simple creatures unworthy of the council. But I understand now. You don't lack strength. You simply measure it differently. To you, strength is the ability to endure, not the absence of pain. Yes, Taemin said. We break and keep functioning. We hurt and keep moving. We lose everything and still find reasons to continue. That's what it means to be human. The council vote came through. It wasn't unanimous. Many abstained, making their disapproval clear. But enough voted yes. Taemin would deploy to Sanctuary Station. Hana and Jiwoo insisted on going with him. They couldn't help in combat, but they refused to let him face this alone. They boarded the assault ship Defiant together, 3 humans preparing to attempt the impossible. As the Defiant jumped to hyperspace, Taemin stood in the cargo hold, preparing himself mentally. He could feel the Devourers in the distance, their hunger like a pressure against his expanded awareness. They were vast, ancient, powerful, but they had never faced a human in Voidborn armor before. Hana stood beside him, not speaking, just present. Her friendship was an anchor, reminding him of who he used to be. Jiwoo checked and rechecked his equipment, a ritual that gave him comfort. Outside the ship, stars streaked past as they raced toward the battlefield. Somewhere ahead, 3 billion people waited to learn if they would live or die, and the answer depended on one human willing to bear the unbearable. The Defiant dropped out of hyperspace and the crew saw hell. Sanctuary Station was under siege by 7 Devourer ships, each 1 kilometers long and built from matter that shouldn't exist. They looked like tears in reality itself, dark shapes that hurt to perceive directly. Around them, the council fleet fought desperately and died slowly. Taemin stood in the launch bay, the armor fully active around him. Through its enhanced perception, he could see the battle in dimensions normal humans couldn't access. The Devourers weren't just physical ships. They existed partially in other spaces, drawing power from dimensions that touched reality like fingers through water. 3 billion people on that station, Jiwoo said quietly, watching the tactical display. Children, families, they're counting on us. They're counting on him, Hana corrected, looking at Taemin. He stood perfectly still, but she could see the symbols flowing across the armor's surface faster and more complex than ever before. Are you ready? Taemin turned to face his two friends. His eyes glowed with that otherworldly light, but his voice was gentle. No, but I'm going anyway. He paused. If I don't come back, tell people I tried. You're coming back, Jiwoo said firmly. That's an order. Taemin smiled, though it didn't reach his eyes. I'll do my best. The launch bay doors opened and space beckoned beyond. Taemin didn't need a ship. The armor would protect him from vacuum, radiation, and the fundamental hostility of space. He simply walked to the edge and stepped out into the void. Immediately, the armor adjusted. A field of stable reality formed around him, creating a pocket where human biology could function. He moved through space not by rockets but by thought, the armor bending the distances between points. To observers, he looked like a dark star, trailing impossible energies as he accelerated toward the battle. The Devourers noticed him. Their attention focused like spotlights, and Taemin felt the weight of their awareness. They were old, so impossibly old that human civilization was a brief flicker in their endless existence. They had consumed galaxies, and now they turned their hunger toward him. Taemin didn't hesitate. He phased through the council fleet, passing between ships without disturbing them. His first target was the largest Devourer, a massive construct that was currently tearing chunks out of Sanctuary Station's outer hull. He struck with void energy, channeling power through the armor that came from places with no names. The attack passed through the Devourer's shields like they didn't exist because in several key dimensions they didn't. The energy found the ship's core and detonated. The Devourer didn't explode. It shattered. Reality around it fractured into pieces that fell into dimensions where matter wasn't supposed to go. The massive ship simply ceased to exist, and the void where it had been took several seconds to fill with normal space again. On the Defiant, Hana stared at the readings. He just erased that ship from existence. Not destroyed it. Erased it. The remaining 6 Devourers responded. They adapted instantly, their shields reconfiguring to protect against dimensional attacks. They launched weapons that existed in states between energy and matter. Each projectile could destroy a battleship. Taemin moved through the attack like water flowing between stones. He perceived the weapons across multiple timelines, seeing where they would be before they arrived there. He phased through some, dodged others, and absorbed several directly into the armor, which converted them into pure power. He struck back, moving faster than tracking systems could follow. Each attack targeted a Devourer's core through angles that didn't exist in normal geometry. The armor showed him weak points, vulnerabilities, places where the ship's existence was less stable. But the Devourers were learning. They began to predict his movements, adapting to his fighting style. Their attacks grew more accurate. One struck him directly, and even the armor couldn't completely protect him. Taemin felt the impact in his bones, in his soul. Pain beyond physical understanding flooded through him. Through the connection he still maintained with the Defiant, Hana screamed his name. His vital signs had spiked dangerously. Taemin, pull back! He couldn't, wouldn't. 3 billion lives depended on him holding this line. He pushed through the pain, channeling it into fuel for the armor. The symbols on his surface burned brighter, and when he struck the next Devourer, he put everything he had into the attack. The ship came apart like paper in fire. But the effort cost him. Taemin felt something inside himself crack. Not physically, spiritually. The armor demanded more and more of his consciousness to maintain this level of power, and he was approaching his limits. 5 Devourers remained. The council fleet pulled back, unable to help and unwilling to get caught in the dimensional conflicts erupting around Taemin. They watched in awe and horror as one human fought beings that had destroyed entire civilizations. Taemin changed his tactics. Instead of fighting each ship individually, he began to move between them, forcing them to cluster. They pursued him, their hunger overcoming their tactical sense. When they were close enough, Taemin did something he had only theorized about during training. He opened himself completely to the armor, letting it channel power without restraint. The cost was immediate and devastating. His consciousness expanded across dimensions he had no words for. He experienced every possible timeline simultaneously. He saw himself succeeding. He saw himself failing. He saw variations where he had never existed at all. The strain should have destroyed him. Would have destroyed any other being. But Taemin had spent his life learning how to endure. He held on to his sense of self by his fingernails, refusing to dissolve into the infinite possibilities that threatened to tear him apart. Power flowed through the armor like nothing it had channeled in 3,000 years. Taemin became a weapon beyond measure, and he struck the clustered devourers with everything he had. The void energy erupted outward in a sphere that consumed all 5 ships simultaneously. For a moment, a miniature black hole formed where the devourers had been. Then reality snapped back and the ships were simply gone, erased so completely that not even debris remained. Silence fell over the battlefield. Sanctuary Station was saved. 3 billion lives continued because one human had been willing to bear the unbearable. But the cost was apparent immediately. Taemin floated in space, the armor's glow dimmed. He was still alive, still conscious, but fundamentally changed. Even from the Defiant, they could see something was wrong. Jiwoo immediately ordered recovery. Get him back aboard now. The retrieval team brought Taemin into the medical bay. When they removed his helmet, everyone went silent. His eyes still glowed, but faintly now. His hair had gone completely white. Lines marked his face that hadn't been there an hour ago. He looked like he had aged 30 years. But worse than the physical changes was the expression on his face. Empty. Distant. Like looking at someone standing on the far side of an impossible distance. Taemin? Hana knelt beside him, taking his hand. It was cold despite the armor's warmth. Can you hear me? He turned his head slowly, as if the movement required great effort. I hear you. I hear everything. Every voice on the station. Every thought across the fleet. Every possibility spinning out across time. His voice was barely a whisper. There's so much happening at once. The medical officer shook his head. His neural activity is off the charts. He's experiencing time non-linearly. Seconds for us or hours for him. We need to sedate him before his mind burns out. No, Taemin said firmly. No sedation. I need to stay conscious. Need to stay in control. He looked at Hana, and for just a moment he was himself again. The armor is a part of me now, forever. I can't remove it completely anymore. The connection goes too deep. What are you saying? Jiwoo asked, though he already knew the answer. I'm saying I saved 3 billion lives today, and it cost me almost everything. But I'm still here. Still human. Barely, but still. Taemin closed his eyes. And when the Devourers come again, I'll be ready. I'll always be ready, because that's what humans do. We bear impossible burdens so others don't have to. The Defiant returned to Nexus Prime as a hero's ship. Crowds gathered at the docking bays. Representatives from hundreds of species waiting to see the human who had saved 3 billion lives. News of the victory had spread through the galaxy faster than light itself. Humanity was no longer the youngest species in the council. They were legends. But the celebration died when they saw Taemin. He walked off the ship supported by Jiwoo, moving like every step hurt. The armor was still partially active, flowing across his body in patterns that made observers look away. His white hair and lined face made him look ancient, though he was barely 30 years old. Threshcore met them at the docking bay, his expression unreadable. He studied Taemin for a long moment before speaking. You succeeded. The Devourers retreated. Sanctuary Station stands because of you. For now, Taemin said quietly. His voice carried that strange echo it had gained since the battle. They'll return, stronger, adapted, they always adapt. Then we'll be ready, Threshcore replied. But his eyes said otherwise. The cost of readiness stood before him, barely holding himself upright. The council convened to honor Taemin officially. They offered medals, titles, wealth. He accepted none of it. He stood before the assembly looking small and tired and spoke words that would be remembered for generations. I'm not a hero. I'm just someone who did what needed doing. Any human would have done the same. We're good at carrying impossible weight. It's how we survived. He paused, his glowing eyes scanning the chamber. But don't make the mistake of thinking this is easy. Don't create more armor bearers. Don't turn what happened to me into a weapon program. The armor chose me because I could bear it. That doesn't mean others can. A young council member, eager and naive, stood up. But with more humans in armor, we could build a defense force. We could stop the Devourers permanently. Tae-min looked at him with something like pity. The armor doesn't make you powerful. It makes you capable of bearing power. There's a difference. Every moment I wear it costs me. Every fight takes something I can't get back. What you're suggesting would create an army of broken people carrying unbearable burdens. That's not salvation. That's cruelty. The chamber fell silent. Even the most militant council members could see the truth in his words. Tae-min was proof of the armor's power, but also proof of its terrible cost. Threshcore stood beside him. The human is right. I opposed his attempt to bond with the armor because I thought he would fail. I was wrong. But he's also right that we shouldn't create more bearers. Let him carry this burden alone, as he chose to do. And when he falls? Someone asked. When the cost becomes too much? Tae-min answered before Threshcore could. Then hopefully you'll have found another way to fight. You'll have developed weapons that don't require sacrifice. You'll have learned to stand on your own. He looked around the chamber. That's always been humanity's gift to the galaxy. Not that we can bear the unbearable, but that we buy you time to find better solutions. The council voted unanimously to accept Tae-min's terms. He would remain the only armor-bearer. When the Devourers threatened, he would fight, but he would also have complete autonomy. No controllers, no oversight, no one giving him orders to sacrifice himself. Medical teams examined him extensively over the following days. The news was not good. The armor had integrated with his biology at a fundamental level. His cells showed markers that shouldn't exist. His brain activity operated partially in dimensions that normal instruments couldn't measure. He was still human, but also something more and something less. How long do I have? Tae-min asked the head physician, a crystalline being with centuries of medical knowledge. The physician chose her words carefully. Time moves differently for you now. Minutes for others might feel like hours to you. In standard measurements, your body could function for decades, but your conscious experience will be much longer. You'll age internally faster than externally. So I'll live a long life and experience it as even longer, Tae-min said with a ghost of his old humor. That's almost funny. In the observation deck, Hana found him late at night staring at stars as he often did now. She sat beside him in comfortable silence. They had been through too much together to need many words. Do you regret it? She finally asked. Taking on the armor? Becoming what you are now? Tae-min thought about it honestly. Every day, every hour, every moment. The pain never stops. I see too much, feel too much, experience too much. He looked at her and his eyes were just his eyes again, warm and sad. But I'd do it again, because those 3 billion people are alive, and that matters more than my comfort. That's not fair to you, Hana said. No, Tae-min agreed, but fairness was never part of the equation. Need was, someone had to do it, and I was someone who could. Jiwoo joined them, carrying 3 drinks from the station's recreation area. He handed them out silently. For a while, the 3 humans just sat together, watching stars burn in the darkness. What happens now? Jiwoo asked eventually. Tae-min took a sip of his drink. It tasted distant like everything did now. Now we wait. The Devourers will come again. Maybe in months, maybe in years. But they'll come, and I'll put on the armor again, and again, for as long as I can. And when you can't anymore, Hana's voice was small. Then hopefully humanity will have found another way, Tae-min replied. He smiled, and it was genuine despite everything. We always do. We're very good at surviving impossible things, at finding solutions when there should be none. That's our real strength, not the ability to bear weight, but the refusal to stay broken. The stars continued their ancient dance beyond the window. Somewhere in that vast darkness, the Devourers gathered and plotted their return. Other threats waited too, patient and hungry. The galaxy would never be truly safe. But for now, in this moment, 3 humans sat together. One carried an impossible burden. One stood ready to help however she could. One would protect them both with his life if needed. Together they represented what humanity brought to the galaxy. Not perfection, not invincibility, not even strength in the traditional sense. Just the stubborn, foolish, beautiful willingness to stand up when everything said to stay down, to fight when victory seemed impossible, to carry burdens that should break them and somehow keep walking. Taemin looked at his friends and felt something warm break through the cold distance the armor imposed. For just a moment, he wasn't the bearer of ancient power. He wasn't the weapon that saved billions. He was just Taemin, sitting with people who cared about him, drinking bad station coffee and watching stars. "Thank you," he said quietly, "for staying with me, for not letting me forget who I am beneath the armor." "Always," Hana replied. "Forever," Jiwoo added. In the command center, Threshcore watched the three humans through a monitor. His opinion of humanity had changed completely. They weren't the primitive species he had dismissed years ago. They were something the galaxy desperately needed. Not because they were stronger than other species, but because when everything went wrong, when all hope seemed lost, when the weight became unbearable, humans had this strange habit of gritting their teeth and carrying on anyway. It was foolish, illogical, completely, utterly human, and it just might save the galaxy. The alarms would sound again someday. The Devourers would return or some new threat would emerge. The galaxy would need its champion and Taemin would answer the call. He would put on the armor and bear the unbearable weight one more time. Because that's what humans did. They saw impossible burdens and said, "Give them to me. I'll carry them so others don't have to." And somehow, impossibly, they succeeded. Not because the weight got lighter, but because humans had spent their entire evolutionary history learning how to function while broken, how to walk while wounded, how to laugh while hurting. The galaxy had many strong species, many wise species, many old species with knowledge beyond human understanding, but it only had one species stubborn enough to touch cursed armor and make it a choice instead of a death sentence. One species that looked at salvation's price and paid it willingly. One species that proved that sometimes the measure of strength isn't how much you can lift, but how much you can carry, and in the end, that made all the difference. The three humans sat together in comfortable silence, watching stars and knowing that whatever came next, they would face it together, one bearing impossible weight, two standing beside him to share the burden in whatever small ways they could. It wasn't fair. It wasn't perfect. It wasn't even right, but it was human, and that was enough.